There is an almost invisible, yet devastating moment when a woman feels that something has changed. The man who once seemed so present begins to withdraw. Suddenly, his messages take longer. His words sound colder. His attention is harder to reach. In that moment, a shadow falls over everything. Fear, insecurity, and a deep sense of loss begin to grow within. Many women, driven by the fear of losing him, make the most human, and at the same time, the most fatal mistake. They try to do more. They send more messages. They seek explanations. They suggest meetings, desperately trying to hold on to what is slipping away. But this effort, though born of love and fear, only accelerates the decay. Why? Because excessive need does not inspire attraction in a man. It creates pressure, not love, but burden. Jung explains in The Dynamics of the Unconscious that everything the soul clings to too tightly will slip away like sand running through one's fingers. The more need we show, the greater the risk of losing what we are trying to hold on to. What we often fail to understand is this. In male psychology, what is hard to reach gains value. A man desires more, what he might lose, not what feels secure. A woman who appears too available, too attached, who leaves no space for distance, becomes emotionally invisible. Excessive presence kills mystery, and mystery is the oxygen of desire. Imagine a precious jewel displayed on every corner. Over time, it loses its value in the eyes of those who see it. But when that jewel is rare, unique, and hard to obtain, it becomes coveted, almost sacred. That is how human desire works. That is how male attraction works. Today, I will show you how to radically change this dynamic, not through games or manipulation, but through deep emotional wisdom. You will learn the art of strategic silence, not as punishment, but as an act of self-love. You will understand how to invest all your energy back into yourself until you become a woman so complete, so magnetic, and so fulfilled that his return, if it happens, is an act of free will, not pressure. And if he does not return, you will have gained someone far more important, yourself. Prepare yourself, because once you understand this principle, you will never have to chase anyone again. You will learn to attract. When a man begins to pull away, many women first experience a deep sense of loss. It is not just the loss of the man himself, but the loss of the illusion of shared future plans. The loss of emotional safety his presence once represented. This loss, though invisible, strikes with brutal force. Fear quietly creeps in. Every minute without a reply feels like eternity. Every cold or distant conversation is analyzed and overanalyzed. In a desperate search for clues, explanations, or blame, the mind loops endlessly. What did I do wrong? How can I fix it? How can I make him be like before again? And with each of these thoughts, the heart contracts a little more. Jung explains in Psychological Types that human beings suffer because they mistakenly interpret what happens within as something external. In other words, we believe the source of our pain lies in another's behavior, when in truth, it is an inner conflict between our unfulfilled desires and our own sense of self-worth. This fear and helplessness are not only painful, they are emotionally dangerous. Under their influence, many women act in ways they never would if they were emotionally centered. They beg for attention. They keep asking questions. They desperately seek answers, where only silence remains. But the more they act from this place of fear and need, the more the man's perception changes. Instinctively, a man is not drawn to someone who seems to need him to survive. Neediness smells like desperation, and desperation suffocates desire. As Jung describes in The Psychology of the Unconscious, desire is born from mystery, from longing, from the space between the self and the other, not from control or possession. Unknowingly, we destroy exactly what we're trying to preserve. When we force a connection, we think we've lost. We want to get closer, but in our desperate effort, we only push him farther away. We want to hold on, but our fear of losing him makes him flee faster. That's why the first step is not to do more. The first step is to stop, breathe, acknowledge the pain, yes, but do not act from it. Every action born of Fear is another brick in the wall that separates us from what we truly want. To stand still in the midst of fear is an act of great courage, and paradoxically, the first true act of self-love. Not toward him, but toward yourself. When a man starts to distance himself, many women believe the solution is to intensify their efforts. It's almost instinctive. If I'm even more present, more loving, more available, he'll remember why he wanted me, and come back. But that thought, however logical it feels in pain, runs directly counter to male psychology. Every extra message, every forced attempt at connection, every search for reassurance does not rebuild the relationship. It corrodes it. Because the unspoken message a man receives is not love, but neediness, not connection, but lack. It's important to understand that people, men and women alike, sense emotional energy long before they process it, rationally. A man doesn't pull away because he makes a cold calculation. He pulls away because his instinct whispers that something has changed. Carl Jung teaches in Symbols of Transformation that what we deny enslaves us, and what we accept transforms us. If we refuse to accept fear, we act out of desperation. But if we accept it, we can turn it into inner strength. If we do not accept the possibility of losing him, we become prisoners of our fear. And that fear seeps into every message, every gesture, every plea. And a man, even if he doesn't consciously realize it, will feel repelled by that energy. Imagine a flower. A flower doesn't chase the bees. It doesn't beg to be pollinated. It simply remains in its essence. Open, beautiful, radiant, and the bees come naturally to admire it. That is how feminine self-love should be. A quiet power, not a desperate pursuit. When a woman throws herself into doing more, texting, calling, forcing meetings, she unconsciously sends a devastating message. Without you, I'm not enough, and that message kills attraction at its root. The paradoxical truth is this. The more a woman tries to save the connection through effort, the faster she drives the man away. Because in the male psyche, conquest is essential. Men do not value what feels guaranteed. Jung explains in The Ego and the Unconscious that the soul instinctively seeks what it does not yet possess. Because desire itself is the source of its vitality. A man longs for what presents an emotional challenge, something he must win again and again. And trying to hold on to someone is like trying to hold water in clenched hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it runs away. It is an act of desperation that ultimately robs you of your emotional dignity. Neediness breeds emotional dependency, and dependency inevitably destroys respect. When a man senses that a woman needs his presence to feel worthy, his instinct drives him toward freedom. For his subconscious recognizes this is not genuine admiration, but an invisible demand that suffocates him. That's why the solution is not to do more, not to chase him, not to ask for attention, not to prove your worth. True power lies in stepping back, reconnecting with yourself, and releasing the need for external validation. When a woman stops fighting to be chosen, and instead begins to choose herself, everything changes, her energy transforms. She is no longer a necessity, but a gift, no longer an obligation, but an irresistible choice. When the feminine soul reconnects with its own worth, it begins to emit a different frequency, a blend of serenity, mystery, and inner fullness that cannot be ignored. This energy not only attracts men, but also acts as a filter. A man who is not ready to meet a woman in her full power will not be able to handle her presence. And it's not about pretending to be indifferent or playing mind games. It's about a real inner transformation. A transformation that wordlessly says, I desire you, but I do not need you. I can love you, but I will not lose my soul trying to hold on to you. And it is precisely in this moment, when there is no more struggle, no more pleading, when you have found your center, that the true magic happens. The man who perceives your absence, not as a strategy, but as the natural consequence of your self-love, will begin to see something in you that he may never have recognized before. A complete, free, powerful woman. And then, and only then, can a new connection arise. Not built on fear, but on admiration, not out of lack, but out of genuine desire. The mistake of constantly doing more to keep him from leaving may seem, in the midst of pain, like the only way out. But now, you know the truth. You don't have to do more for him. You have to do more for yourself. There is a fundamental truth about human nature. We value what is rare the most. This law applies not only to economics, but also to the emotional and interpersonal world. What is offered in abundance, what is always available, is ultimately taken for granted. Love, desire, and admiration feed on the sense of exclusivity, conquest, and the possibility of loss. And in the male psychology, that is even more true. A man values what he cannot fully possess. He admires what he must win over, again and again. When a woman becomes too available, too predictable, too devoted, she unconsciously loses her status as an emotional challenge. And without challenge, the drive to conquer fades. Without conquest, attraction dies. Carl Jung explains in The Psychology of the Unconscious that true desire arises from longing, and longing can exist only in emotional distance. When we are too close, too available, we destroy the very space that desire needs to grow. Imagine a rare jewel, hidden deep within an inaccessible cave. Those who know of its existence are willing to take risks, to search, to invest time and effort to reach it. Now imagine that same jewel lying freely on a table, available to everyone without effort. Its perceived value changes, not because the jewel itself has changed, but because the perception of its rarity has. It is the same with emotional dynamics. A woman who preserves her mystery, her inner world, and her independent life becomes a treasure that is difficult to reach. Not because she plays games, but because her fullness makes her inaccessible to those who do not deserve her. Excessive availability sends another dangerous message: that your time, your attention, and your love are available without effort or conditions. And in the male subconscious, that perception lowers your value. A man does not seek only love. He seeks admiration. He wants to feel that he has earned something precious, that his presence, effort, and devotion have meaning. When he feels he doesn't have to try, that your love is guaranteed, his instinct for pursuit falls asleep, not because he is a bad man, but because it is in his nature. Jung expresses it precisely in symbols of transformation. Passion is ignited in the human heart when the object of desire is wrapped in mystery and inaccessibility. When a woman ceases to be an emotional challenge, desire disappears. Often, in the name of love, a woman gives all her time, attention, social life, and projects, unknowingly placing the man at the center of her existence. This devotion, noble in its intention, is deadly to attraction. A woman who remains active in her own world, who nurtures friendships, pursues her passions, and invests in her personal growth, sends a far more powerful message. I choose you because I want to, not because I have to. And that emotional freedom is profoundly attractive. Do you want to be unforgettable to a man? Then do not give him your entire life. Give him the privilege of being part of it, without becoming its center. Be a complete universe in which he wants to orbit, not a satellite circling around him. The perfect balance lies in showing sincere interest, but not dependency, in offering affection, but not urgency, in being present, but not unconditionally available. When a woman masters this art, the art of being generous in love yet selective with her energy, her value in a man's eyes rises, naturally, not because she manipulates him, but because she has restored the natural equilibrium between giving and receiving, between closeness and mystery. Remember, what is ordinary is forgotten. What is rare is treasured. You are not here to be easily accessible. You are here to be valued, admired, and above all, respected. When a woman senses that a special man is beginning to withdraw, her first instinct, almost unstoppable, is to bridge the distance with words, explanations, justifications, or promises. This impulse is born of the deep fear of losing something that once felt secure. But in the subtle art of human relationships, there is a force far greater than holding on, the strategic retreat into silence. This silence is not one of resentment or deliberate ignoring meant to wound or manipulate. It is a conscious act of emotional wisdom. As Jung writes, in the dynamics of the unconscious, resistance to an impulse does not mean its suppression, but its transformation. True silence is the transformation of fear into serenity, of need into inner strength. In silence, your true self reveals itself. A woman who invests in herself, who keeps growing, who is unafraid of her own evolution, radiates an irresistible power. She does not need to explain her worth. She embodies it on a deeper level. The soul, too, must be nourished through genuine friendships, through dedication to inspiring projects, through closeness to beauty, art, and nature, through everything that reminds you that your life has a higher purpose than merely being loved by someone else. The energy once directed toward him becomes a centrifugal force, creating its own rich universe. And when a woman becomes her own universe, when her happiness no longer depends on external circumstances, something extraordinary happens. Her presence rises to a frequency that not only attracts but also filters, for not every man can meet the greatness of a woman who has learned to choose herself. It is no coincidence that men who once took a woman for granted often feel her absence as a painful void once she is set out on her own path, because she is no longer the same. She has evolved, she has been reborn, and she did not do it to prove anything to anyone, but because in the midst of pain, she discovered a radical truth. The most important person she had to choose was herself. To rebuild oneself does not mean to close the heart or become cold. It means standing with an open heart, but with both feet firmly on the ground. It means welcoming love without losing oneself in it. It means being able to look love in the eyes and say, I love you, but I do not need you to be myself. On this new path, the man who may return will find a different woman. A woman capable of deep love, yet no longer willing to abandon herself for anyone. And if he does not return, it will not matter, because she will have found something far greater. Her own life, her own purpose, her own happiness. Jung captures it beautifully in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, when he writes, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. You have chosen the path of awakening, the path of courage, and every step you take on your journey of self-healing will be a quiet victory that echoes through your whole being. Today, you know, it was never about winning him back. It was about winning yourself back. Mastering your emotions does not mean suppressing or denying them. It means learning to move through them, consciously, powerfully, and with dignity. In the process of reclaiming your own power lies the difference between an unforgettable woman and a forgotten one. Her ability to master her emotional impulses, especially in moments of greatest vulnerability. When a man begins to withdraw, a woman's instinctive reaction is to seek answers, force meetings, demand explanations. That is human. That is understandable. But it is precisely in those moments that true emotional value is revealed. Not by giving in to impulse or acting from fear, but by responding with awareness and self-love. Carl Jung points out in The Ego and the Unconscious that the greatest obstacle to growth is the projection of inner conflicts onto the outside world. When we allow fear to govern our actions, we project it onto the other person and burden the relationship with a pressure it cannot bear. But when we learn to carry ourselves emotionally, without demanding, chasing, or begging, we rise above the storm and become a beacon of stability. Emotional mastery means being able to observe the inner storm without being swept away by it. It means understanding that fear, sadness, and insecurity are natural feelings, yet acting impulsively from them only distances us from what we truly desire: healthy, loving, and respectful relationships. Here lies the essential difference between healthy desire and toxic dependency. To desire someone is natural, even beautiful. But to become emotionally dependent on another's presence destroys any chance of genuine love. Dependency arises from inner emptiness. It makes us believe our happiness depends on someone else. And by giving away our power, we become vulnerable, anxious, and ultimately less magnetic. A woman who masters her emotions does not deny her feelings, but she also does not let them control her. She can miss a man deeply and still choose not to call him. She can long for an answer and still choose silence. She can feel the impulse to reach out and still remain with herself. This inner strength is neither cold nor distant. It is the highest form of self-love. It is the ability to say to oneself, "My worth does not depend on anyone's presence or absence. I am enough. I am whole." And that energy is so powerful, so magnetic, that it makes words unnecessary. You can feel it in the way she walks, in her gaze, in her very way of being in the world. A woman who does not need to be chosen to know her own worth emits a vibration no man can ignore. Emotional mastery does not just change the dynamics with others, it transforms your entire life. It frees you from the roller coaster of emotions tied to external circumstances and places you back in control of your emotional destiny. And when a woman reaches this level of inner maturity, she stops being merely an option. She becomes a conscious choice, sought after, admired, respected. Jung reminds us in The Psychology of Transference, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Emotional mastery is exactly that awakening, the end of seeking outside what can only be found within. Today you know, emotional self-mastery does not mean denying your humanity. It means honoring it. It does not mean suppressing your desires, but recognizing them without allowing them to define your worth. It does not mean being unfeeling. It means being unbreakable. Because in the end, the woman who masters her inner world is the same woman who conquers the outer one, without ever having to chase it. There comes an inevitable, blessed moment on the path of a woman who has worked on herself. A moment when she realizes a liberating truth. She is not here to be chosen by someone else. She is here to choose herself, again and again, every single day, to remain true to her essence, to create a life so rich, so fulfilled, so authentic, that her well-being no longer depends on the presence or absence of another person. When a woman reaches this level of awareness, her energy changes radically. She no longer steps into the world seeking validation, love, or approval. She becomes a source of self-love herself. So powerful that those around her have only two options: rise to meet her, or walk away, and in either case, she wins. Carl Jung writes in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "The unlived life is a disease from which one can die. To live a life waiting to be chosen, seen, or validated by others is to die slowly. To choose yourself, on the other hand, is to heal. It is to truly live." When a woman stops striving to be a man's option, and instead becomes the prize that only a truly worthy man can reach, something powerful happens. She ceases to be a passive possibility in someone else's mind. She becomes an unforgettable presence. She does not beg for love. She does not plead for attention. She does not compete. She does not chase. She simply is, and in that authenticity lies her irresistible allure. If he returns, it will be because in your absence, he felt the emptiness your presence once filled, not the pressure of being pursued. Because in the silence of your withdrawal, he realized that no one else carries your light, your quiet strength, your uniqueness. And if he does not return, you will know he was never truly meant for you. Your journey was not in vain. It led you back to yourself. For what you have gained on this path is priceless. Your dignity, your inner peace, your emotional freedom. Always remember, you are not here to be completed by someone. You are already complete. You are not here to be validated. Your very existence is validation enough. You are not here to live through another's eyes. You are here to look into your own reflection and smile with pride. Jung said, "Who does not become himself becomes the echo of other people's expectations." Today, you choose to be a voice, not an echo. To walk your own path, not to become someone else's destination. And it is precisely in that moment, when you no longer need anyone to feel whole, that your energy becomes so authentic, so radiant, so magnetic, that those who once took you for granted will feel your absence like an unfillable void. But then, It will no longer be about them. It will be about you. About the unshakable love you have finally planted and nurtured, in the only place where it can never be taken away, within yourself. If this message has touched something within you, if it has inspired you to see yourself through new eyes, then subscribe now and join me on this journey toward greater self-love, inner strength, and true transformation. Because this is only the beginning of your best self.